Welcome to the Knitters Party podcast. My name is Megan. I'm so excited for you to be joining me today. Happy New Year, happy holidays. I hope 2017 is going to have amazing things in store for the whole knitting community. And so I figured that now's a good time for me to kind of jump on the bandwagon and start a knitting podcast. I've been obsessed watching everybody else's knitting podcast. It's really been an inspiring year for me to not only improve my skills through watching these knitting podcasts, trying new patterns because of what other podcasters are doing, as well as seeing really amazing yarns and bags and everything that all these knitters talk about on their amazing podcasts. So I figured that I have a lot of time on my hands in the coming year, so I figured I would go ahead and start my own knitting podcast. So this is the Knitters Party podcast. I'm really excited. My name is Megan, like I mentioned. You can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Meg311yo. 311 is my favorite band. All the other Megan names were kind of taken, and so that is my handle on Instagram, Ravelry. You can also find me on Facebook if you're interested, Meg311yo. So let's just jump right in. A little bit about me. My name is Megan Cheer. I am coming to you today from Michigan, but this is not my permanent home. This is my family home. I've been here for the holidays, but currently my husband and I are kind of homeless at the moment. Long story short, we've been living in San Diego, California for the last 3 years. Loving California life, loving everything about the West Coast, specifically the beer culture. That's why this is the Knitters Party podcast. So if you want to grab yourself a drink, feel free. I do plan to be drinking in future episodes. Today, I'm hosting a party later today, so I'm not going to start drinking just yet. But don't you worry, in coming episodes, I'm sure I'm going to be drinking some craft beer. But anyway, so we've been in San Diego. My husband and I are both Middle Eastern scholars, and currently he is a PhD candidate at UC San Diego, and he got the amazing opportunity to basically go to the Middle East for his PhD research, and I followed him. And so for the last 4 months, Paul and I have been living in Egypt, Alexandria, Egypt, kind of doing our own studying things. Like I mentioned, have been a Middle Eastern scholar before as well, and so I went there, studied more Arabic language, but had a ton of time on my hands to knit everything. So I've been doing a ton of knitting in Egypt, and since I've come back from Egypt as well. But my husband has been doing PhD research in Alexandria. The reason we're in Michigan right now is because he got such an amazing opportunity. He was granted the Fulbright Hays Doctoral Research Fellowship, which is allowing him to study in London, in the UK, for 6 months before we go back to Egypt, Cairo this time, for another 6 months. Basically, we are just jet setting around the globe, doing research and having a great time, but this means that I've been like homeless, you guys. It's insane. I've always been not so much of a homebody. We are definitely travelers, which is good because his job and my jobs have allowed me to, be able to travel, be able to do everything I want. But that's really been a cool experience. So while I'm in London, I am not allowed to work or study full time, and so I plan to knit. That's about it. And especially going to the UK, I'm really excited to check out all the local yarn shops, see what sort of amazing hand-dyed yarns that they have available over there, as well as just keep expanding my knitting. I got the inspiration to do this podcast because I have been watching tons of knitting podcasts for the last last year intensely. And the thing with knitting podcasts is that they are so inspirational. I have improved my own skills as a knitter because of what I've seen on other podcasts. I've gone out of my comfort zone and knit things that I've seen on knitting podcasts because I thought they were really amazing. I've also just kind of learned a lot more about yarn, about needles, about brands, about project bags, about literally everything that you see on these amazing podcasts. And so I figured, hey, you know what? I've got tons of time on my hands coming up in the next year. Why don't I start a knitting podcast? And so that's why I'm here today, joining you from my parents' kitchen in Michigan for the first episode of the Knitters Party podcast. So again, thank you so much for joining me today. Let's get into the knitting, shall we? First of all, this episode is called Knitting in Egypt, or All of My Egyptian Knits. When we were in Egypt, we were in Alexandria, like I mentioned, and we got there day one. We signed up for cell phones and DSL internet service. They told us it would be 2 to 3 weeks before we get internet installed in our home. It ended up being about 7 weeks, and so I had no internet, no reliable internet really, for about 7 weeks. It was absolutely insane, but that means that I got a ton of knitting done. And so you'll see that I'm wearing a very nice hand knit sweater. I did knit this, but I'm going to talk about this a little bit later in the podcast. But the first thing that I want to show you guys is this amazing stole that I knit for my mother-in-law. This is my first finished object that I made in Egypt. It took me a full month, and this thing is absolutely huge. So hold on 1 minute. I will be right back, and I will be super happy to show you this amazing stole. So this is the first of my serious accomplishments, or what I'm calling my finished object section. And that's because I'm really proud of this amazing stole. Like I said, it is for my mother-in-law. The color isn't coming up really true. Let me unwrap it first. This thing is huge. When I first blocked it out, it wanted to be about 10 feet long. I finally got it down to about 8 feet long. Oh, that's much better. The colors are really showing up. This is the Simply Welted Stole pattern, and it is the simplest. It could not be any easier. It's just sort of these sections you'll see at the top and at the bottom. Garter stitch and then stockinette stitch. It is easy as pie. It was boring as hell. I could not stand knitting this. It was so squishy. The yarn is from the Fiber Seed. It is a Made in America yarn. I actually purchased the yarn as part of a kit in San Diego, California. There is an awesome yarn store, and I'll have to put a link below to this yarn store. But they sold a kit, and so it came with the pattern, it came with the yarn, you know, 3 beautiful skeins of it right in a package. And my mother-in-law went shopping for me. This was actually part of my birthday last year, in February, in case anyone's wondering. I'm an Aquarius. So last February, my mother-in-law was in town, and we decided to go yarn shopping, of course. And I bought a lot of yarn for myself, but she saw this wrapped around a beautiful mannequin, and she just gasped. And she said, "Megan, would you knit this for me?" And of course I said yes. How can you say no to your mother-in-law? Not really realizing how big of a project I was undertaking. This is, oh, that's inside out. This is a 350 stitch stole. 350 stitches of garter and stockinette. It went by so slowly, and I just could not handle it. This is fingering weight yarn from the Fiber Seed, like I mentioned. There are 3 colors. This top one here is called Robin Egg. It's like a really beautiful, it's not showing up true to color. It is a true robin egg, sort of green teal, like a very light, bright teal. The second color, I believe, is called Rip Current, and that is a mix of this first color and the third color, which is a really beautiful, sort of a creamy ocean blue. It's beautiful. I just could not stand it. So what am I doing without internet in Egypt, knitting a 350 stitch stole for at least a month solid? Well, thankfully my good friend here in Michigan gave me the Harry Potter audiobook series. So I was just listening to these audiobooks, knitting my life away in Egypt because I had nothing else to do. We ended up going there a couple weeks before my classes had begun, and so for the first 2 weeks I had nothing to do but knit. After that I, had classes and homework, and it actually got really intense for a while there, but I did have plenty of time to knit, and this was the first project that I had completed. I do want to make a note on the fringe. So the pattern is written to include fringe on every row. Basically what you're supposed to do is, cut the yarn at every row and then kind of leave that yarn for the fringe. I started doing that. I didn't like it. For the first and third color, they are tonal, but they are definitely like a solid, right? So they're not going to have any, any problems pooling or anything. But this middle color, you'll see, is variegated, and it started pooling. So on these first and third colors, I didn't have to cut the yarn every time. On the middle color, I did have to because I hated the way it was pooling, and I ended up ripping back several rows because I didn't like the way it was color pooling. Personally, I'm not a fan of color pooling. I know that that might be heresy to some of you viewers out there. I apologize. I just don't like color pooling, at least not for a gift for somebody else, because I don't know how they will feel about it. So I did have to cut the yarn every row, and it just looked very untidy, unkempt. And so what I did at the end is I've, of course, had plenty of yarn left over. They were 100-gram skeins of fingering weight yarn. I want to say there was about 460 yards. It was a really big skein of yarn for each color. And so there was plenty left over. I decided to make some really nice, a lot neater tassels. And so I just used some of the extra yarn, and with a crochet hook, I went ahead and, you know, made a proper tassel for that, just hoping that it would look a little tidier than the, you know, just the frayed ends that it wanted it. Anyway, I think it turned out fine. You can find the pattern on Ravelry. There's only a couple of completed projects because I believe it is only sold as a kit, only at this one store in San Diego. And so this is truly a one-of-a-kind piece, and I'm really excited to give this to my mother-in-law. We're going to be visiting her up in Canada. Yep, my husband's family is Canadian. There's tons of travel. But we're going to be going up to Canada for Orthodox Christmas in early January, and I'm giving this to her then. So I really hope she likes it. Mom, if you're watching, I love you. I had not so much fun knitting this, but it was a really nice, very thoughtful gift, and I thought of you in every stitch while we were missing you in Egypt. So it was good. All right, that was my first Egypt knit, and I'm really happy to get this done. I know I'm balling it up like I don't respect it, but this thing is literally 8 feet long, so I'm gonna have to just fold this up a little bit later. Alrighty then. So moving on, I had a bunch of little projects in Egypt that I just I didn't feel like showing on the podcast. I made a bunch of coasters. I made some really pretty Christmas ornaments. I made a couple of hats that I ended up giving away for Christmas already. So here on the podcast, I'm just going to show you the articles that I have in front of me, but this is basically 4 months of knitting. So sorry, it's not exactly recent finished objects, but these are my serious accomplishments, and these are my Egyptian knits. So they've got fond memories for me, and just a lot going on. So the next thing that I made is the jeweled cowl. It is a cowl pattern by, let me tell you who's this. Anyway, I'll have to go put a link to the designer and the pattern below. But it's really a super simple cowl. It is all stockinette because you're knitting in the round. And this yarn is Manos del Uruguay. It's their lace weight yarn. And I bought this also up in Canada. You know, my mother-in-law purchased this for me as well, but I loved it because it's almost like Oreo colored. It's a proper black and white color, variegated. It does pool a little bit, but it doesn't bother me because it's more almost like striping rather than a proper pooling. You're not getting huge sections of white or of black or of anything you don't want. So it looks really nice. I call this my Oreo yarn, and I'll let you know the actual colorway below as well. So this pattern, this is the first cowl I've made. These are size 6 seed beads in a bright red. Oh, I wish it was coming up a little brighter because they are Christmas red. They look very nice in this jeweled cowl. I had a single, basically what I did to go to Egypt is I purchased a ton of yarn, and I said, we had originally planned to be in Egypt for about 1 year. And so I originally was thinking I needed 1 year's worth of yarn. So I brought enough to make a handbag and a sweater and a cowl and a couple pairs of socks and this stole. And, I had this whole list of things that I wanted to make while I was in Egypt. I ended up going through that yarn in 4 months. So silly me for thinking I could get away so easily. Even then, I purchased some additional yarn when I was there, but don't have any to show you, unfortunately, because I gave it away in my Christmas gifts, but I'll talk about that later. But this was some yarn that I just had kind of extra. I didn't have a pattern in mind for it before I had left. I just knew that I wanted to knit with it when I was in Egypt. About this. So like I said, yeah, so I had all this yarn ready to go. I had a single vial of seed beads in red. And so the pattern calls for something like 250 seed beads. It was definitely going to be more than the single vial that I had. So I decided that I was going to add a bead on every other repeat. And you can see that I actually really like the way it's turned out, but there's supposed to be a bead on every individual line, right? So right here and right here and right here, here. So long story short, I didn't have enough beads. I think it looks great. I don't know how or who wrote this pattern thinking that adding a bunch of seed beads to a lace weight yarn was going to be okay, because this thing deflates like nobody's business. I mean, you put it on and these beads are so heavy that it just falls flat. There's no way, unless you want to kind of tuck it around. I guess that doesn't look so bad. But it's so stretchy being a lace weight yarn, and they had a very large gauge. I want to say that this was supposed to be knit on a size 6 needle or a size 5. I ended up knitting this a size or 2 lower, but it is still deflating so easily. It looks gorgeous when it's up like this, and then you tuck it down and it doesn't stay up. It goes flat immediately. So I actually can't stand this cowl. This was one that I was really unhappy about, and I think it was just that, sorry, forgive the noise, just adjusting my seat here. I think the designer made a beautiful pattern. It's kind of on the bias, these beads. They're a nice kind of diagonal section. It's only in one section, but these beads are so heavy that you cannot, it's a non-functional cowl. You cannot use it as a cowl. It will not keep you warm. It'll basically bunch up. Even then, this is knit in all stockinette, so of course the edges roll up. And I did my best to block it out, but even after blocking, you still can't get out that roll. So when it stretches out because the beads are heavy, and you've got this roll, it ends up being just a tiny little sausage tube. I can't use this. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with this. It's really beautiful. I wish I could, I want to keep it and use it and wear it. It's maybe a warm weather knit. So when I go back to San Diego, maybe in the spring, summer, maybe I'll wear it, but it deflates so easily. So I feel bad. Otherwise, it's very pretty. The pattern is well written. I love these seed beads, but I just can't bring myself to wear it because it just deflates so easily. So I'm sorry I didn't love this pattern. Eek. All right, one of my last finish objects before I talk about my sweater, which is the big bad boy here. This is the never-ending sweater. I'll tell you guys about it. But I did make one more thing. I made a shawl, which is a big deal for me because I hate knitting shawls in general. Okay, sorry. I know that that is like also heresy in the knitting world because I know so many people who exclusively knit shawls. In general, I prefer to make garments just because I feel like they're more functional. I can wear them. I think you can do a lot more with them. And for the amount of time you're putting into it, if you've got 550 stitches on the end of your shawl pattern, you could make a sweater in the same time it takes you to knit a shawl. Granted, shawls are fun. You can, you know, find really amazing, beautiful yarn to go with it. This is backwards too. I'm not even showing you the good side. But I've made two shawls in the past. This one was a lot better, and for a lot of different reasons. This is the Pebble Beach shawl, and it is a crescent-shaped shawl, so it is not triangular. I love how the ends kind of curl up a little bit and make little spirals. It's almost like a potato chip. There we go, like a potato chip sort of vibe, but it's so much nicer. Here's what I did. This is 2 yarns held together. There's actually 3 strands in here because I had, all right, well, let's just go over it one by one. There are 2 strands of Knit Picks Alpaca Cloud Lace Weight red yarn. This colorway is, oh, I have it. Oh no, I don't. Well, so this colorway is just their brightest red color. And I ended up making, I wanted to make a cowl, or I'm sorry, I wanted to make a featherweight cardigan out of this lace weight yarn, but the Alpaca Cloud is so fine. It is almost cobweb. and I didn't like the way it swatched up. I didn't like my count. It was going to take me forever to make this cardigan because my gauge was so fine. I mean, it is the thinnest yarn I've ever worked with in my life. So in this, there are 2 strands of alpaca cloud, in addition to 1 strand of, this is a blue heron cotton rayon fiber, also lace weight, and it is a really beautiful orange variegated, I'm gonna go ahead and call it multicolored. There are 2, so it's cotton rayon twist is the name of the yarn. And this yarn is 2-ply, 1 cotton, 1 rayon, and they both have different colors and they both are variegated. It is just the most multi-dimensional yarn in the world. But what I ended up with is a really amazing cowl that has just such amazing texture to it, because the alpaca cloud is matte. It is as matte as it gets. There is no gloss, no shine. There's no cotton, there's no silk, there's, you know, nothing shiny in it. It is alpaca. It is as matte as can be. And then you pair it with this cotton rayon fiber, and which is the shiniest yarn I've ever used in my life. It was absolutely incredible to work with. And so I used one strand of the cotton rayon blue heron yarn and 2 strands of the alpaca cloud by Knit Picks. And it turned out beautifully. You can see that there's kind of a mix of the matte finish with the alpaca mixed with sort of the gloss of the rayon twist. Plus it's a great pattern. I actually had a ton of fun knitting this, and it's a pattern knit for fingering weight yarn. I ended up using, like I said, 3 strands of lace weight yarn, which is kind of ended up almost like a DK. Between like a sport to DK, but that also meant that I could knit less, which is the reason why I had a lot of fun knitting this pattern, because I didn't have to finish with 500 stitches on my needles. I finished with, I think, 275 at the last little bit end. Then you do a picot, which is a lot more time intensive, but at that point, it's already, you know, it's already done, so it's perfect. I just think it turned out wonderfully. Like, look at the stitch definition, the color variation. I wish this was showing up a little more true to color, because it is a proper red and orange shawl. But I just think it's so nice, comfortable. It's a long shawl. I ended up making, the shawl comes in small, medium, and large sizes. Because I was going completely off base with my yarns here, I ended up knitting between a small and a medium. So, but again, it's also like a DK weight, essentially knit and finger, you know, it's just one of those patterns that you heavily modify, but it was awesome. I also just realized that Kristen from the Yarngasm podcast also knit a Pebble Beach shawl, and that is funny because I've been knitting a ton lately of knits that are inspired by other podcasters, and so sorry, you're going to see some works in progress that are you know, things that other podcasters are knitting too, but I just get so inspired. But this one I actually knit on my own before I saw that Kristen had made her own as well. So this is my Pebble Beach shawl. I love it. It's gorgeous. And it was a lot of fun to knit. So I think I've broken the curse of my dislike for shawl knitting. So that's that. All right, let's get to this bad boy here, because I am so excited to tell you guys about what I'm wearing currently. This is, I don't know who to start first. This is the Old Romance pattern by Joji Locatelli. So romantic. And I ended up making it from a cardigan into a sweater. I used the custom fit pattern gauge, basically, by Amy Herzog to make it into a sweater, like I said, instead of a cardigan. And this thing fits me beautifully. Look at this gorgeous lace panel down the side. A little bit about the yarns. The green here is Candy Skein, which, funny story about this yarn, Candy Skein is the name of the designer. The colorway is in Sugar Snap Pea, and I bought this yarn at Vogue Knitting Live last year in Pasadena. And so I lived in San Diego, right? Pasadena is about an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half northeast of whatever. So I go to Vogue Knitting Live. It's my first knitting convention, and I scour the booths and scour the booths. And before I purchase anything, I'm looking around. I'm looking for colors. I'm looking for textures. I'm looking for lace weight, cardigan weight, you know, lace weight and fingering weight. Hello, those are my preferred yarns to work with. And I go to booth after booth after booth after booth, and I can't find anything. All of a sudden I see this one booth and they've got beautiful colors. I wish this was coming up a little more true to color. This is a proper like Kelly green, and it's so beautiful. And so I start talking with the designer from Candy Skein, and I'm like, oh, hey, you know, I'm really excited. I love this yarn. Like, tell me about it. She's like, well, we're hand dyers from San Diego. I was like, what? I'm from San Diego. And so it was so funny that I went to Pasadena to buy local hand-dyed yarns. And since then, I'm just really excited to be using this Candy Skein yarn. It was a dream to work with. It is a light fingering, so for 100 yards, I got 100 grams, 463 yards of this yarn, and it is a little bit light, especially considering that this yarn here is Sweet Georgia Tough Love Sock, and this is in their Deep Cove colorway, and this is a much heavier weight fingering, and so I ended up making how the pattern works, and I'm not giving too much away. You make these lace panels, and you're actually supposed to knit the sleeve back and forth in rows. So your rows would go this way, as opposed to working, you know, cuff up. This is the story of my never-ending cardigan, you guys. It literally took me almost the full 4 months to make this, and I had nothing to do but time, you know, nothing to do but knit, nothing but time on my hands. And I about reknit this cardigan 4 separate times. The first time I realized I wasn't getting gauge, no big deal. I don't really care about gauge because I don't know, I figure that with a little bit of math I can kind of re-gauge my swatch and sort of, I can improvise, right? And I can say, okay, I'm getting, you know, 6 stitches per inch instead of 6.5. That's not a big deal. I'll just add a couple here, there, whatever. And so I can figure out the math fairly easily. The problem is with Hohi's pattern, she wants you to go back and forth, and so she's got short row shaping. So it might be like, you know, knit 185, wrap and turn, you know, go back down, knit another 190, wrap and turn, whatever it is. And I realized really quickly that that wasn't going to happen. Not only that, shame on me, I am definitely not a sweater designer, but I got a little bit through the first sleeve and I'm like, this is going to be huge on me. Like, there's no way that I need 100 rows around to get around my, you know, my upper arm here. There's no way I wanted like 60 rows around my, the cuff of my wrist here. Why on earth would I want that many? Like, it looks like it's going to be so big. So I knit the first sleeve. It's tight. It's really tight. I didn't follow directions. And I'm like, oh, I can make this work, you know, like, oh, I can make it work. So I start knitting the second sleeve and I knit both sleeves. I connect them on the back of this cardigan and it doesn't fit. So I had fully finished 2 of these lace panels. I had fully finished 2 sleeves using my custom pattern, and I had started knitting across the back of maybe an inch, 2 or 3 inches, and it doesn't fit. So I'm like, shit. This is, sorry. And I'm like, darn it, this is really great, amazing yarn, and I love this pattern. There is no way I'm giving up now. So I'm like, okay, sitting there, and I'm literally on this Egyptian tram in Alexandria, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, do I frog it? Do I keep it? If I keep it, I won't wear it because it's too tight, and it's wool, and it'll, you know, chafe and make me hot and sweaty, whatever. I just could not in all good consciousness let this go. So I frogged it that night and I started re-knitting it again, going back and forth in short rows up the arm, and I tried to make it a little bigger. Still doesn't fit. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. So that's just not happening. Right. So I ended up frogging it again. So this Candy Skein yarn holds up very well, and let me tell you, it holds up very well to being frogged and reknit. One of my skeins was reknit 3 times, so I can firsthand attest to how great this yarn is, and just you know, sort of the quality of it. But after that second failed attempt at sleeves that are too small, I had been knitting this thing forever and not getting anywhere. Literally, you frog it and all you have left are these beautiful lace panels, and that's not a sweater. That's not going to get you anywhere. So I did a gauge swatch. I looked up Amy Herzog's custom fit pattern, and I realized that I want to find a way to knit the sleeves from the cuff up instead of, you know, around and connected by this. So I did a little bit of math and I realized that this lace panel can be about 4 inches wide when it's blocked out. So I said, okay, 4 inches is what this is already done. How many more stitches do I need to make this go back and forth? So I went on to Amy Herzog's website. If you've never done a custom fit pattern, I cannot recommend it enough. This changed my life. You measure everything on your body. I'm talking everything. You measure how wide is the widest part of your arm up here. How wide is your bust at the biggest point, at the smallest point underneath the bust. You measure from your length from the, the armpit basically to the end of your cuff. You measure the distance between like your shoulders. How high do you want the neck to go? And so, this is a fairly low scoop neck here. She has patterns for V-neck. She has literally like 150 patterns for any style of cardigan, sweater, any kind of garment that you might be thinking about. She has a pattern for it. And she has like a generator where you put in your gauge, you put in all your measurements, you put in exactly what you want, and she spits out a pattern at you. This changed my life, you guys. You don't even know. It was incredible. So I get this pattern and I start knitting and everything just falls into place. It was so good. So I ended up purchasing a pattern for a cardigan. So it's supposed to be, split down the middle. I did the back and both arms, and I realized I want this to be a sweater because I just felt it needed to be a sweater, I guess. And so I started making the front, sort of using a little bit extra because there's supposed to be like a 5-stitch wide button band. So I basically cast on 5 additional stitches and just knit back and forth from the bottom up, just using this custom fit pattern. And it was amazing. This is also, okay, so I've made a couple of garments before. I've made like 2 other sweaters. That's about it. But that's a lot of knitting. That's like a ton. So I feel proud about my 2 sweaters. So don't make fun of me, guys. But this was the first one that I had made. I'm sorry, I had made 3 other sweaters. This was the first one that had seamed set-in shoulders. And let me tell you, this lace panel goes beyond. And so this lace panel did not stop here and then pick up, where the seam continued. That's all knit in one section. So I had to seam it, figure out how to do this. Anyway, it was just such a great learning experience, and it was amazing. It was literally incredible. So once I get everything done, I, seam up the sides, I block it out, and it's too short. I was so deflated because, it's made to be a cardigan, and so a cardigan can come right to the end of your waist and you're perfect. It was too short for what I wanted it to be, which was a sweater, and you're knitting from the bottom up, and so it's not like you can just, undo your bind off and keep knitting a couple more inches. And I'm just thinking to myself, my God, why can this sweater just not finish? It just wouldn't die. The problem was I loved it. I love the color of yarn that I'm using. I love everything about it. I loved the seaming. I loved kind of making this just a little super easy ribbed collar area. It's the easiest. It's so much fun. I had an amazing time knitting this. It just would not die. And I wanted it to just finish because I wanted to wear it. Mind you, I'm in Egypt. It's like 85 degrees and sunny, and I'm in a desert. There's no way I'm wearing a knit sweater, but I just wanted to finish it. So anyway, I thought about steeking it up the middle just to make it a cardigan. And I'm like, okay, well, the only way I can do that is to make it a cardigan, right? So I look up cardigan, or I look up steeking tricks, and there's kind of an issue where if you're using superwash wool, which this is, there's not an easy way to kind of reinforce the steek so that it won't unravel on you. And there's a really good chance that once you steek it, once you, make button bands in both directions, and once you finish it all up, that it could unravel on you. And that would just break my heart if that happened. So I'm thinking, okay, I can't steek it. What else do I do? So I asked my friend out in San Diego on Facebook, and hi Liz, if you're watching. I asked her, I was like, oh my God, how do I steek? Do you recommend steeking? What do you think? She is the leader of the San Diego Knitters Guild, and she is brilliant. She knows everything about yarn, everything about knitting, everything about technique. She's like a knitting guru genius. So of course she's the person that I'm going to ask when I have an issue with my knitting. So anyway, she said, well, why don't you just, cut it at the bottom and cast on more stitches to go down? Like you can knit down. And I was like, no, I can't do that. This is a bottom up sweater. I can't cut it and then knit down, like top down style. And she's like, yes, you can. Like, why wouldn't you be able to? And I thought about it and I was like, why wouldn't I be able to? Like, they're just live stitches. They might be twisted, but you just, you just fix the twist on the stitch so that it's the right way. And that's what I did. And so I added about 3 extra inches, and now it is the perfect length. I have a nice, side. Sorry, I'm wearing really slouchy pants today, you guys. But I had this style on the first cardigan, before I had done anything. I left it open on the bottom here, and so I want to say about here, I cut into my stitches very carefully. I ended up unraveling about an extra row or 2, just trying to get it. And then I picked those all up on my needle and I just knit down. And even the best part was that I cut the cardigan right above the bottom here. And so I was able to save this whole ribbing because I did not have a ton of that yarn left, so I couldn't re-knit the whole bottom hem on this. But I was able to just cut it right at the hem, unknit a little bit, and then pick them all up. The one thing that did take a lot of time is that to sew the hem back on, so the bottom hem here, I ended up doing Kitchener, and this is about 120 stitches on front and back. So I had to Kitchener 120 stitches front and back onto my cardigan, and then it was finally done. So you guys, please praise this amazing sweater. I love it. I had so much fun knitting it. I had so much fun doing the set-in sleeves here. It was a blast. If you've never done set-in sleeves, or if you're too maybe apprehensive to try a new skill or something, just give it a shot. I ended up loving it, and to be honest, I felt like my sweater went by a lot faster because I was able to knit in pieces instead of a raglan where you're knitting the whole thing and then you've got 300 stitches around here before you separate off for the sleeves. It's too much, and it can be a little exhausting. So when you knit with the set-in sleeves and you knit in pieces, you're knitting a front. There might be 100. For me, I'm like a larger size, and so for me, the front right here, and given my gauge, I was like 125 stitches. So you're knitting 125 instead of 250 in a tube round. Not only that, you can knit sleeve, front, back, seam them together, and it was great. So I had a lot of fun. Don't be scared, you guys. Try it. Do something new. I promise it'll be worth your while. I can't promise success, results may vary, but I highly recommend it. I do want to let you guys know how I connected the lace panel to, my knitting around, because what I ended up doing, sorry, I have seasonal allergies, so I'm a little sniffly today. Sorry about the noise, guys. But what I ended up doing, I picked up with just a double pointed needle, I just picked up a couple of stitches along this edge in the Deep Cove, this dark blue colorway. Picked up a couple stitches on both sides, so the inside and on the outside. Then I had my green stitches, this candy skein. I had these green stitches going, and I was working back and forth in rows. And basically what I was doing is every time I got to this end, that stitch that was on the double pointed needle being held for the lace panel, I would knit that together with my candy skein yarn. On the other side, I would SSK those together, just basically so that you can't see the blue yarn where it's actually connecting. You can just a smidge, but when it's far away, you can't see anything. It did make just a tiny, you can see here, there's a couple of little holes. It's like a ladder. There was no way to avoid it. I tried aggressively blocking it out, but it didn't work so well. And the nice thing is that on the kind of whatever this side is, on this side of the pattern, there's like no laddering at all. Once you get to, oh God, I don't think I can do this. Once you get to the other side, there's a little bit of laddering on both sides. So kind of a bummer, but whatever. It was so fun, but this was the never-ending sweater. So now it's finished. I can wear it, and I haven't. I think it's just because, and I'm in Michigan, so it's cold. I mean, it is winter here. We had a, white Christmas. It's been snowing. It's been cold. But where am I going to wear a beautiful hand-knit sweater that took hundreds and hundreds of hours? This is a very special sweater to me. I can't just leave this be. Okay, I've been talking forever about my finished objects. Let me make sure I don't have anything else I don't. Good. Thank God. So let me show you guys what's on my needles right now. And I promise that in future episodes, unfortunately, I'm not going to have this many finished objects. Maybe. I mean, we'll see how much knitting I get done. But realistically, I'm going to have more more whips, works in progress, things like that. Let's see. So what's on my needles right now, you guys? I have a couple. And I'm going to start with one that I started forever ago. I have a hoe, half object is a sock. I hate it. I'm like the weirdest knitter ever. I've already mentioned that I don't love knitting shawls, and I don't love knitting socks either. I kind of hate knitting socks, you guys. Okay, and specifically with this. This is, you know, just Knit Picks Hawthorne Sauvie Island colorway. It's coming up pretty well. There's a lot of greens, blues, teals, and then of course that shocking pop of orange that I just love. That's what sold it for me. And this is simply a 64 stitch sock, top down, or cuff down, I'm sorry, with a Eye of the Partridge heel. And I love me a heel flap and gusset. So here's how this happened. Paul and my husband and I had been in Egypt for about 1 month. We decided to take a vacation because I had some time off away from my studies, and he is super flexible with his research and kind of come and go as he pleases. So we decided to visit Kuwait for the weekend. And it's a, you know, quick 2.5-hour flight from Alexandria, Egypt. It wasn't bad. Funny enough, it took us through Dubai, which was awesome. But we flew on Fly Dubai, which is it's like their budget airline, and it was just like flying Spirit. Anyway, that's totally off track. But I was like, okay, what can I bring on the airplane to knit? And I said, oh, I have this, you know, amazing sock yarn. I had already wound it up into 2 50-gram cakes. I have another half over here, but it's never gonna get done. So the story behind this is I had purchased this yarn. I was, you know, planning all along to make socks, and I've got a set of Addi Turbos, which are, you know, my preferred sock. They are 47-inch circular needles. They are a US size 2, which is a 2.75 millimeter, which is my preferred sock. I know it's quite large, but I've got big feet. And so for me, I like the fabric that it makes. This is kind of a heavier fingering weight. I'm sure you're all familiar with Knit Picks Hawthorne, but anyway, that's it. So I search everywhere, and mind you, for Christmas last year, I had just got a set of circular needles from Knit Picks. They're options, interchangeables, nickel-plated brass. Love them, but of course they, you know, started a size 4, so I don't have these small ones. So I had my pair of Addi Turbos, and I cannot find them to save my life. So I'm in Egypt. I know I packed everything knitting that I've ever owned. I had almost an entire like mini travel size suitcase filled with yarn and needles and, you know, scissors and all the, you know, stitch mark, everything. I had my whole knitting set packed away, and I cannot find my Addi Turbos, and I'm mad because I prefer to knit socks 2 at a time, toe up. That's what I do because I have second sock syndrome, bad. I don't like knitting socks in the first place, and even then, these don't even really fit me. They're not properly blocked anyway. I just could not find my Addis, and so I'm like really, really sad about it. So I had a set of double pointed needles. They're just, you know, bamboo from Michael's, like the craft store. And so I started knitting on double pointed needles, and I hated it. I just hated it. So I'm in Kuwait. I'm on the airplane going to Kuwait, and I'm knitting these, and I'm like, bah, humbug, so mad. I hate this whole thing. You know, I was just like not enjoying knitting it at all, like grumpy as hell, knitting on my double pointed needles when all I wanted are circulars, 2 at a time, toe up, and I'm knitting 1 at a time, cuff down, DPNs, no contrast, heel, toe, nothing. I had nothing. I was not enjoying this knit. And so I finished 1 sock when I was in Kuwait. I started the second sock on the plane ride home. My needles are elsewhere. That's why I took them off. I hate them. I don't think they even fit me. And what I did was I just did like a super simple 3 needle bind off for the toe here. And I figured, well, if it doesn't fit perfectly, I can always like, you know, rip back, knit a couple more rows, you know, and finish it up with a Kitchener toe, whatever I want. It's just not gonna get done. I don't know what to do about them. So anyway, this is like my my hoe, half object, and another work in progress. Like all I have left to do is knit, what, 4 inches on the foot here, knit a toe, and I'm done. Just I have no motivation to do it. That said, they are kind of cute. Put it on for you. They're okay. They're socks. You know, you would never know I do yoga sometimes. No, I'm not the bendiest person, but anyway, I just don't know what to do. So that's one of my works in progress. Sorry. And so what do I do when I hate knitting socks? I don't know, I guess I cast on some more socks, right? Because my next work in progress is also a pair of socks. Living in this awesome project bag. My mom got it for me for Christmas. I'll have to put the name in the down bar below because I don't remember what it is, but it's a really beautiful peacock drawstring project bag. I had asked her for a project bag for Christmas, and she did not disappoint. I love color. I love peacock. I love glitter. I love sequins. Oh, you're gonna see a lot from me in the future. I love everything. So I finally got my chance to cast on my 2 at a time, toe up, magic loop socks, and these are pretty cool. These are the Mercury socks. Yes, I am copying Inside number 23. I know she's made a pair of her Mercury socks, and I just loved the pattern. It's free on Ravelry, you guys. You should just make a set yourself. They're actually a cuff down pattern, but I decided to make them toe up. And that's what I'm doing. About this project and this yarn and these needles, actually, I've got a whole story about everything. The yarn is more Knit Picks Hawthorne. This colorway, and let me show you the back because you're gonna get a better idea without all the lace. This colorway is like pinks, a smidge of orange, and yellow. It's not quite coming up true to color. It's okay. You can see it's variegated. Online, this is bright dark red with pops of yellow. I was originally going to make a scarf for my husband's uncle, who I really like. Hi, David. And I was originally going to make him a scarf, and this yarn arrived, and it was pink and not red, and I was pissed because I also purchased this, which is Knit Picks Capretta, which is an MCN. It's 80-10-10. So 10% cashmere. I'm like, oh, I'm going to make a really, high quality scarf using this black and red and yellow yarn. I'm going to twist it. I'm going to make, so I literally cast on about 4 different scarf patterns trying to make this look redder. But the problem is when you blend it with black, it just looks pinker. Total opposite of what I wanted. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. And so I cast on a pair of socks for him. And I'm like, okay, well, this isn't going to work as a scarf, so let's do some socks. So I cast on 68 stitches on my, these are not Addy, these are actually Chowgu Red Twist. I purchased for myself. Merry Christmas to me. I purchased for myself a new set of interchangeables, specifically with smaller needle sizes because my other set begins at a 4. These begin at a 2, which is at 2.75 millimeter, my preferred sock needles. And so this is actually a 60-inch circular. It's a little long, whatever. Anyway, so long story short, I cast on 68 stitches and this yarn just still does not look good. So I'm like, screw it. All right, these socks, they're not for him. So I decided to make these for a friend. I started on these about 2.5 weeks ago. This is all I've gotten. Granted, they're 2 at a time, so I've finished almost the entire foot. I'm also going to put a black, same yarn, a black heel and cuff in there. But they're okay. The pattern is well written. It's kind of fun to make. I actually don't love these Chowgu needles. They are simply steel, I want to say, just a stainless steel needle, but they're really not slick at all. And so I'm used to nickel-plated brass. My Knit Picks options are nickel-plated brass. My Addies, which are my preferred knitting needles, are nickel-plated brass. And so these, which are stainless steel, they're incredibly sharp, which is nice, but I don't like them. The yarn does not slide easily onto the needle. You can hear it. It's like squeaking. you know, to try and manipulate this yarn on these needle. I mean, you can see I'm having trouble literally showing you how much trouble I have. And so I don't love these needles. I hope they're going to be appropriate for other projects. But as of now, this is the first project I'm trying them on, and I don't love them. But that's okay. I'm going to give them a chance. I have a whole interchangeable set, and these are expensive. These are, you know, I looked into Chow Goos. I looked into Hayas. I've looked into a couple of other not knit picks, the other one. Anyway, I just, you know, I looked into ones I've looked at reviews for these, and the Chow Goos, you know, came in first. So I ordered a set, and I'm going to give them my best. But these socks are eventually going to get finished. I wanted to give them to my friend for Hanukkah because she is really tall, and so she's got larger feet as well. So a 68 stitch socks, I ended up decreasing down to 66 stitches, but a 66 stitch sock, say that 4 times fast, will fit her. And so they actually fit me too. I'm a size 10 shoe in women's, but she's even, I think, one size larger just because she's so much taller than me. But I didn't get a chance to finish these, and I just went to her Hanukkah party yesterday and didn't have them finished. So I'm a bad friend. Her birthday is not until like May, I want to say. So maybe I'm going to give them to her for her birthday, but we'll see. Yep. All right. So that's my Mercury socks. A little bit about the pattern. It's really simple to memorize. Let me see if I can stretch it out there. It's not coming up super well. It's a fun pattern. It's okay. I don't dislike it. I just dislike knitting socks. So sorry about it. Sorry, not sorry. I don't love knitting socks. So that's good. The last thing on my needles that I'm going to show you is something that I have knit once before. And I'm sorry, I don't have a ton of progress here. Something that I knit once before. This is the Julissa pattern. It is a pullover, boat neck pullover. Gorgeous, kind of sexy pattern by Vanessa Smith. She is an amazing designer. I like a lot of her patterns. I have knit this before. I'm like ashamed to tell you guys this, you guys. This yarn is Knit Picks Comfy Worsted. It's a worsted weight sweater pattern, so the gauge is right. This is a 75% cotton, 25% acrylic blend. When I knit garments, I find that I don't want to wear them because they're so hot. You know, they're made out of wool. Maybe they're superwash, maybe they're not. They'll start pilling. I have this really bad problem where the armpits will felt almost immediately, and it looks really terrible. It looks horrible, and I don't want to wear my hand knits outside, and I feel like it's because it's wool. I feel like I'm just uncomfortable. I'm hot in wool, and it's, you know, it stretches out so much. And so the first time I knit this for myself, it takes a lot of yarn. And worsted weight is not cheap. It's cheaper than fingering, but I think for the value, I think you get more out of fingering just because it's more yardage and the gauges, whatever. You can do more with fingering than with worsted. And so the first time I knit this, I knit it out of just some acrylic yarn that I had purchased at Michael's. My gauge was off, and I decided to make bust darts because I'm, you know, fairly chesty up top, and so I decided to make some bust darts, which ended up giving me way too many stitches. And this pullover, I finished almost the whole thing. I did the whole body and bound off. You know, it's a raglan sweater, so you know, pull the sleeves aside. And once I finished knitting the whole thing, it was way too big, just way too big. So I just threw it away. I didn't even frog it. It was acrylic yarn. Like, what am I going to do with acrylic yarn? I'm like a wool junkie. So this time I decided to try it out with cotton. This is in the Celestial colorway. It's literally, I think, like the same blue that I had purchased before. And there's acrylic in this. I don't even know what to say. I literally am having a hard time admitting right now that I'm knitting with acrylic blend, like an acrylic blend yarn. So this is 75% cotton, 25% acrylic, and it seems to be working out really well right now. It's super soft. I'm hoping that once I finish it, sorry, there's not a ton to show, just like a, you know, quick 3.5 inches. But I hope when it's finished that I'll want to wear it out more because If it pills, I can just shave it off. If it's not going to felt because it's acrylic and cotton, and I feel like this is going to be a much more wearable fabric than, you know, something like what I'm wearing today, which is never going to see the outdoors. It's just going to live in my home, and it's going to be a beautiful sweater that I wear inside and maybe in Christmas photos, and that's about it. So anyway, about the pattern, super well written pattern. It is amazing. It has this gorgeous cable pattern on both sleeves. Here we go. Really beautiful plate pattern on the sleeves, as well as down the front with a couple little lace panels on the side. It is a gorgeous pattern, absolutely stunning. I mean, Vanessa Smith has another pattern that I'm dying to knit. The only problem is that it takes about 3,000 yards of sport weight yarn. Yeah, you heard that right. 3,000, for my size, 3,000 yards of sport weight yarn. And even when I'm looking on knit picks, that's going to cost me $160 to $250, depending, you know, which sport weight yarn I'm looking at. 3,000 yards. That's going to take forever to knit. Also, I found out that Vanessa Smith's gauge is extremely loose. I am a flicker, which means that I hold the working yarn in my right finger and I don't let go of the needles when I knit. I just kind of flick it around, and my gauge is, I don't know, it's normal for me, but I guess it's tight compared to Vanessa Smith, who I think she just knits continental style. Sorry, tons of clicking over here. No problem, but when the pattern calls for a size US 6 needle for, you know, most of it. I gauge swatched for a US 6 needle, and my gauge was a full 1.5 stitches per inch short. So I was too small. So I was getting, I think, 7.5 stitches per inch. Her gauge wanted like 6 stitches per inch. I don't actually know. These are not real measurements. So don't base your Julissa based on my, you know, whatever. But I was getting way too many stitches per inch because I was just a tighter knitter. I went up to a size 10 to get gauge, a US size 10 to get the gauge. And with this yarn, it was just looking terrible. This fabric was going to be loosey-goosey and too flowy. And I'm wanting to make a structured sweater, and so the last thing I want is this horribly loosey-goosey yarn. I just decided to do my own sort of calculations, and I'm knitting these on a US size 7, which is, I want to say 4.5 millimeter. Yes, 4.5 millimeter. US size 7 needles. And I like the fabric I'm getting. I just have to do math, and I have to make mine 1.16 times larger than what she recommends on her pattern. So that means that for everything, you know, if you cast on 100 stitches, I'm casting on 116. If you are doing, you know, 8 stitches for the raglan, I'm doing like 9 and kind of guessing at that. So it takes a little bit of math, it takes a little bit of work, but I like how it's turning out so far. I'll let you know how it goes, and you're probably going to be seeing this one again. Okay. That's a lot of knitting. So that's all I've got on my needles right now. I might be making one more thing, but we'll see. And before I let you go, I want to see if there's anything I want to do. So I want this knitting podcast to be a little bit different. I travel a lot, so I was hoping to maybe end every episode with just, you know, a short little story from some of my travels. Like I said, I've been living the last 4 months in Alexandria, Egypt. I am about to be moving to London for 6 months. I'm then going back to Cairo, Egypt for another 6 months. And so I've got a lot of travel in my future. And I hope that this works out. If you guys like it, let me know. If you don't like it, that's okay too. You're welcome to switch over. And I just hope that I can be another podcast that you guys watch and listen to and, you know, join me for a little bit of yarn time. So I'm really excited. Anyway, one of the fun stories that I want to share with you is about the time I visited Kuwait, right? Where I made these ugly, hideous socks that I'm never going to finish. We were there on vacation, just a quick 4-day weekend, and I'm like, okay, you know, I'm in Kuwait, I gotta go to the yarn shop, right? So I look up online, sure enough, there's a yarn shop in Kuwait City called Needles and Yarn. It has an English name, but Kuwait is an Arabic-speaking country. I'm at an advanced level in Arabic. I actually was studying at the superior level in Alexandria, just to, like, you know, whatever. But my Arabic's pretty good. So I go into this yarn shop and they speak Arabic. I realize I know nothing about knitting in Arabic, and so I don't know the words for wool. I don't know the words for needles, like knitting needles or anything. I don't know, I know a couple of words. I know how to say cotton. Cotton is the word, so, you know, pretty similar, pretty easy. And anyway, I'm going into this yarn shop in Kuwait, and it is the size of like a box. Like, it's like a dorm room. It's like an probably a 10 by 10 foot room, packed wall to wall with yarn, right? And so I'm looking around and there's a couple of nice ladies in the back, you know, just crocheting. And I notice immediately that there's no wool yarn. Literally, there's just no wool in this entire store. And so I'm kind of walking around and I've got my phone, but I have an Egyptian cell phone plan, so I don't get service in Kuwait. So I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how to say wool. Like, how do I ask if they have wool yarn? And so I'm just like watching this whole conversation. So and mind you, I'm like pretty good at Arabic. So I go up to this, you know, the shop owner is a man, and I'm like, hi, thank you. You know, I like your shop. Do you have any yarn, or it's like string, sort of the same word. I'm like, do you have any yarn that comes from a sheep? And he goes, what? And I'm like, you know, like not cotton, but sheep yarn, and I don't know how to say wool. And so he's like, oh yeah, okay. So he's like, Sauvie, I even forgot the word now after I learned it. And so he gets the idea that I'm looking for wool, and he goes, no. He's like, we're in Kuwait. Like, it's so hot, we don't wear wool. So all of this yarn is made with cotton or alternate fibers. And I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. And so I kind of just like go back to doing my own thing, and I'm like looking around at all these, you know, fun yarns that they have. And I end up getting 3 skeins of Araucania. I think that's how to pronounce it. It's a Chilean yarn. I'm sorry. The yarn is made in China, hand dyed in Chile, and then I guess they send it all over the world, because I bought 3 awesome skeins, which have since turned into projects of this yarn. And the cool thing is that it's made out of tencel from sugarcane. So this was my first really alternative fiber. Like, I've used cotton and wools and alpacas and, you know, all sorts of animal fibers and you know, acrylics and whatever. But this is the first yarn that I purchased that was made out of sugarcane tencel. And so that was really cool for me. I knit it up and it's really soft and shiny, but it had a huge variation between the colors. I bought 2 skeins of like a nice leafy green, and then 1 skein of like a silver. Those have gone out to my sister, hi Amanda, and my friend, hi Mike, I just made a couple of hats. They're not winter hats, they're not for cold weather places, you know, it's a sugar hat, so there's not a lot of insulation. But it was just really fun to go into a Kuwaiti yarn shop and to see these women knitting with cotton, to see that they literally do not offer any wool yarns. It was a trip, because I guess I'm used to American and Canadian wool stores, yarn shops where you buy wool, and to have a store just not sell any wool, it was really interesting. So anyway, I thought that was a fun story to start off with. Maybe next time I'll tell you guys about the time I visited the pyramids, or when I went in a taxi with a bunch of my drunk friends and my friend threw up in the back of a taxi. Gotta catch me next week for that one. But no, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this show. It was actually really fun for me to sit down and record this. I hope you'll join me again in the future. If not, that's okay. Thanks for making it to the end of this one. If you like this episode, go ahead and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss anything else. Give me a thumbs up. That helps other people see that there's a new knitting podcast out there. And happy holidays, you guys. Happy knitting. It is 2017 and we can knit everything. Oh, one last thing that I wanted to, I guess, say is that I'm really looking forward to this channel doing a couple of knit-alongs, and I'm thinking about kind of making an alternative sort of knit-along where we knit for charity. 2016 kind of helped me realize priorities in life and politics and things like that, and wherever you lie, I think it's a great idea to kind of spend some of this time and energy knitting for charity. So I'm thinking that every month I would love to do a really basic, easy charity knit. So, you know, knit a hat for anybody. It could be for preemie babies, it could be for cancer patients, it could just be knitting a hat for, you know, the poor and just donating it. But if this channel takes off and if we get, hundreds or thousands of people knitting one hat a month, which, by the way, a hat takes me about 2 days to knit if I'm not even serious. You could knit a hat in a day. Imagine just what we could do together if we just decide to knit a little bit for charity. So on my Ravelry page, I've set up just a little bundle for some charity knit ideas. I'm thinking about doing something right now. I'm not there yet, but when we decide to do our first knit along, I think it's going to be for charity. So if you're interested in that, I think it would be really fun. I'm going to hopefully give away some prizes. I've got something from Egypt that's a little special as my first giveaway gift. And then we'll see what happens from there. So let me know if you'd be interested to knit for charity, or if you're more interested in knitting for yourself. Lord knows I've never knit anything for charity yet, so this is just an idea in my head for now. It has not come to fruition just yet. So if you're interested, let me know. If you're not interested, let me know as well. Just, keep me posted. All right, guys. Thanks again for joining me. My name is Megan. I am your host for the Knitter Party podcast, and you can find me everywhere as Meg311yo on Ravelry, Instagram, if you're looking me up on Facebook. And I'm going to go ahead and make a Ravelry group page for the Knitters Party podcast. So why don't you just go ahead to the groups, find me there, and join me next time. Thank you so much for joining me this time, and welcome to a new podcast. I hope you guys like it, and I hope to see you again next week. Bye.